The International Criminal Court launches a preliminary inquiry into whether war crimes were committed in the Palestinian territories. Israel brands it an outrage and the US calls it counterproductive. So, will an ICC investigation help or hinder the quest for peace? This is Inside Story. Hello there, welcome to the programme. I'm Shiulie Gosh. The International Criminal Court has opened a preliminary examination into whether war crimes were committed in Palestine last July and August. The ICC's looking into the events that occurred during the conflict in the Gaza Strip, which opens up the possibility of war crime charges against either Israelis or Palestinians. Palestine's foreign minister called it a historic moment. But some, including officials in Israel and the United States, argue that Palestine shouldn't even be a member of the ICC. James Bays explains the story from UN headquarters in New York.
Over 2,100 dead, almost 500 of them children. The war in Gaza made 2014 the deadliest year for Palestinians since 1967. Now, the very first stage of a legal process that could see war crimes charges launched. When the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, signed the Rome Statute, the treaty that governs the International Criminal Court, on the last day of last year, he also signed a declaration giving the court jurisdiction from the 13th of June 2014. The chief prosecutor of the court, Fatou Bensouda, has now launched a preliminary examination into events from that date. In effect, an initial inquiry to see if she should launch a formal investigation. In a statement, she said, upon receipt of a referral or a valid declaration, the Office of the Prosecutor, as a matter of policy and practice, opens a preliminary examination of the situation at hand. Accordingly, the prosecutor has opened a preliminary examination into the situation in Palestine. The office will conduct its analysis in full independence and impartiality. From Jerusalem, the reaction was swift and angry. Prime Minister Netanyahu said, "It's absolutely scandalous that just days after terrorists butchered Jews in France, the General Prosecutor is beginning an inquiry against the state of the Jews, and this only because we defend our citizens from Hamas. Unfortunately, this probe renders the ICC part of the problem and not part of the solution." Experts, though, say the prosecutor's move is not politically motivated.
I think the Israeli authorities should understand that this is a judicial process, and inherent in that is impartiality and application of law to facts. They also need to understand that the prosecutor will be looking at serious crimes committed by Israelis as well as serious crimes committed by Palestinians.
It's almost 3 weeks since the Palestinians signed up to the Rome Statute. Their aim then was partly legal but also political. They knew that the legal process, now in its very earliest stage, was going to be extremely drawn out. Politically, though, in this highly charged period of an Israeli election campaign, they're already making waves. James Bays, Al Jazeera at the United Nations.
Well, a lot to talk about, so let's get the thoughts of our guests now. Joining us from Jerusalem is Alon Liel, former Director General of the Israeli Foreign Ministry. From Ramallah, Mustafa Barghouti, Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative. And from Amsterdam, Jeff Handmaker, Senior Lecturer at the International Institute of Social Studies at Erasmus University Rotterdam. Gentlemen, welcome to the programme. Jeff, let me start with you because I just want to set out the technicalities of this. This is not the ICC launching an investigation. It's a preliminary inquiry to see if there is the basis for an investigation. What does that entail?
Yeah, correct. The ICC must initially conduct a preliminary investigation in order to decide whether there is a basis for pursuing a full-scale investigation and eventually indictments.
And how long could this take? Days, weeks, months?
It could take quite some time indeed. The court is a very professionally run organization with teams of lawyers. several hundred lawyers, in fact. It must investigate a tremendous amount of data which has been generated by various committees, by human rights organizations. It will be listening to a range of different views from different organizations and government parties. And so it's going to take quite some time before it will take a decision that there is enough to pursue a formal investigation. But given, of course, that in the past there have been numerous formal investigations by high-level judges, judge-led committees, it's very unlikely that the court will take a decision not to continue into investigation, in my opinion.
Mustafa Barghouti, why are the Palestinians doing this now? Is it because they failed to get their resolution passed for a timetable to end occupation?
No, not only because of that. We do that because there were crimes committed in Gaza, war crimes, worst atrocities, and crimes against humanity. They happened before, and they happened again during the last attack on Gaza. They continue to happen also in the West Bank in the form of killing people, innocent civilians, as well as the crime of building illegal settlements in the occupied territories. So we want the world community, we want the international law to be applied. And what we are demanding here is that Israel is subjected to the same laws like every other country in this world. So far, Israel have had, for 67 years, a status of impunity to international law, and it has been committing crimes without being accountable.
The ICC makes it clear, though, Mustafa, the ICC makes it clear that it will also look at the possibility of war crimes against Palestinians. And they are referring, of course, to Hamas firing rockets into Israel.
They're most welcome to do that. We don't mind. But we are sure that there is a difference between state terrorism practiced by a country that uses its army to kill civilians, like they did in Gaza when they killed 580 children, and no less than 2,280 Palestinians, and acts of resistance against aggression. People have the right to defend themselves, and we are sure as Palestinians that we did not commit crimes. And as we are subjecting ourselves, as well as Israel, to international law. So what's wrong with that? Why Israel has this hysterical reaction to the level of one foreign minister like Lieberman coming up and saying he wants to dissolve the International Criminal Court? Why are they doing so? It's simple, because they know they committed crimes. And it's like a thief who was caught while he was committing stealing.
Let's bring in Alon here. Alon, the Israelis have predictably reacted very angrily. Benjamin Netanyahu says this is absolutely scandalous, coming just days after Jews were targeted in France. And Avigdor Lieberman, as Mustafa has said, is calling for the ICC to be dissolved.
Yes, I think that's the feeling of the majority of the Israelis, that the Palestinians are going too far, because this war is seen in Israel, the last war that Hamas launched, as something that Israel was responding to. And even if things deteriorated during the war, it looks like Hamas was interested in this war. And this is the Israeli, I think, reaction, and the harsh reaction of the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister have a lot to do, of course, with the coming elections. There is a feeling that when you go to the international court, especially with what's happening all over the world, especially in Paris this week, it can help the Likud in the elections. This is how the majority in Israel are feeling. This is how the public is feeling. I personally am not sure about it, but the high-level response, the very emotional response, has a lot to do with the fact that we have elections exactly in 2 months.
OK, we will talk about that further. But first, let's just take a look at what this preliminary examination will mean. It is, of course, going to look at possible war crimes in Palestinian territories, which means both sides, Israelis and Palestinians, could face charges. Now, Israel says Palestine should face consequences for firing missiles into civilian areas during that conflict of July and August of last year. 6 Israeli civilians were killed in rocket attacks, and 67 soldiers also died in that conflict. Palestine wants Israel charged for invading the Gaza Strip and carrying out airstrikes. Over the course of the 50-day conflict, more than 2,000 Palestinians were killed. The UN says they were mostly civilians. Alon, you were talking there about the upcoming elections in Israel, of course. Do you think that this move by the Palestinians will help Netanyahu in his Israeli campaign, or is this a problem for him?
I think it will help him, but it can work both ways. The fact that Israel is being pushed to this legal corner and might be the result might be that officers, maybe even soldiers, won't be able to leave the country, to travel, especially to Europe. And we have compulsory service. Almost every family has a soldier. Many families have officers. It's not an army that it's kind of detached from the society. Many people are worried about their immediate relatives, their sons. So it is creating the impact that on the public that probably Palestinians are not serious in their intentions for peace and so on. This is playing into the hands of Netanyahu. The other side of it is playing into the hands of the opposition. Going to the international court with other things happening in the international arena now against Israel is showing how isolated and vulnerable Israel is in the international community. And many of the Israeli voters are afraid of it, and they attach this isolation to the political behavior, the diplomatic behavior of this government. So I think it's difficult to divide, but I think that part of the public, I won't say exactly which part, is responding in an emotional and aggressive way that will help Netanyahu, and part of the public is responding in a way that is observing the status of Israel internationally, and this might help the opposition.
Okay, I want to pick up one point that you made there and put it to Mustafa. Lots of analysts saying that the moves that Palestinians have made, including launching a Security Council resolution, joining the ICC, demanding an investigation into war crimes, all of those move us away from Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. The US says it's counterproductive. All of these moves get in the way of negotiations. What do you say?
I say the negotiations were dead. Netanyahu killed them. He stopped the negotiations and he obstructed implementing what was agreed upon.
But are the Palestinians stopping them from being revived?
23 years for negotiations to produce anything. No. We are not stopping them from being revived, but negotiations while settlements continue to be built is nothing but a cover for Israeli process of annexing the occupied territories and consolidating a system of apartheid, racial discrimination and occupation. 47 years of occupation is enough. We cannot tolerate that anymore. And let me tell you why the Israeli public is afraid. And they should be afraid. Because during the last war on Gaza, Israel used 100 times more explosives than they've used during the last 3 wars on Gaza. They've used 21,000 tons of explosives. This is 5 times than what was used against Hiroshima during the Second World War. They've used such an amount of explosives, including barrels of explosives. They used F-16 jet fighters. They used rockets. 91 families were completely annihilated. We are talking about the most obvious war crime that can be. We're talking about the most obvious crimes against humanity that can be by killing children in this savage manner. So that's why they are worried. And if they are worried, they should force their government and army to stop doing these crimes. This is the way out of this situation.
Okay.
If they are worried, they should pressure their politicians to end occupation. And I totally don't agree that these moves are helping Netanyahu. If they
I
are
can see
helping
that
Netanyahu,
Alon
he would
wants
be
to say
happy.
something,
He's
but
so
I just want
angry.
to...
And Lieberman is drowning in his corruption cases anyhow.
I want to put this this question to Jeff. Is there a perception that the various diplomatic moves that the Palestinians are making unilaterally is moving us away from a more comprehensive peace agreement? And do you agree that maybe there is a turn in global opinion and that Israel is becoming more isolated in the way it reacts towards the Palestinians?
Well, certainly. And there's one point I want to clarify, a real misconception that people have about the ICC's role in all of this. The ICC is not going to be investigating everyone who took part in these hostilities in Gaza. It is only going to take interest in high-level, high-ranking IDF commanders, high-ranking civil servants, for example, the Ministry of Defense. It is not going to be investigating the state, although crime of aggression, though not accepted by the ICC, is in fact an international crime. It's going to be investigating high-level officials. And of course, these high-level officials have every reason to be concerned.
But just to clarify, it's also accepting ICC jurisdiction means the Palestinians themselves are liable for war crimes investigations. Is there a chance that this could backfire on the Palestinians?
Yes, indeed. They are eligible for criminal investigations. That's very possible. And indeed, as Mr. Barghouti has made clear, they are open to that. Hamas, as I recall, also made very clear that they are open to the ICC investigating what happened in Gaza, including the behavior of their militants. Of course, we're also seeing backfiring consequences of the fact that Israel has been withholding taxes from the Palestinians. But that's, of course, a subsecondary reaction purely on the part of Israel. But the biggest consequences, of course, in this case financially, are going to be superseded by the fact that I can imagine most Palestinians will feel that justice is worth much more than money.
I know that you wanted to jump in before, Alon, when we were talking about whether these moves were moving us away from Israeli-Palestinian negotiations.
Yes. When I look at the wider picture, the Palestinians can go the violent, the military way, the legal way, the economic way, and the diplomatic way. We are speaking now on the legal aspect. I don't think they have an advantage on the legal aspect because Israel will make an enormous effort to defend itself, to expose Palestinian crimes. I don't think there is necessarily a very big advantage on this level. But let me please finish. On the political level, the Palestinians have a huge advantage, huge. And what they did in Europe in the last 3 months, going from one parliament to the other and asking the parliaments to recognize Palestine, I think we're going back to it now in the second half of January with the Italian parliament, with the Belgian parliament, and some more. I think this is influencing the Israeli public in a more dramatic way than any lengthy legal procedures that it will be very difficult to the Israeli public to follow, to get into it, and it will affect the two sides. By the way,
are you saying you see a very different response towards Israel from European countries as opposed to the US, which of course is a staunch Israel supporter?
Sure. I don't know how the Paris terror will affect this wave, but what we have seen in the last 3 months is Europe taking the initiative of recognizing Palestine, while the United States is staying aside, almost completely indifferent to this momentum, and even blocking the developments in the Security Council. And I think if the Paris terror attacks will not overshadow now what was going on in Europe in the last 3 months, and it will come back to this momentum, I see this as something that will be much more effective on the Israeli public and on the possibility of bringing the sides to the negotiating table than the developments in the international legal court in The Hague.
OK, let's just take a little look at a bit of background on the International Criminal Court. It was founded in 2002 to investigate genocide, war atrocities and crimes against humanity. 122 countries can be charged under its jurisdiction, but with over a decade under its belt, the ICC has been criticised for only investigating cases in Africa, and to date, only 3 cases have been completed. Mustafa, on the face of it, the Israelis don't really have much to worry about, do they? I mean, the ICC's only managed to get 2 convictions since it was set up in 2002.
If they are, if they have nothing to worry about, then why they are making such a big fuss of it? Why they want to dissolve the ICC? No, they have a lot to worry about. In reality, what you see today is 2 things. We, the Palestinians, are using the most possible non-violent way of resisting occupation and apartheid. We are going to the international community. We're going to the International Criminal Court. We're following what the United States and European countries and everybody is advocating, which is stick to the international law. That's what we are doing. Israel is angry because this non-violent approach is effective. The other thing is that
what are you saying,
we are demanding our rights, and we are demanding the end of occupation. People have to remember there is an occupation, and there is settlement building, and there is a system of apartheid. Israel is practically now is put exactly in the same tunnel that the apartheid system was put in South Africa. That's why they are worried, because they know that this case at the ICC will now enhance dramatically the approach and the campaign of boycott, divestment, sanctions against Israel because of its policy.
Okay.
Now, on the issue of terror in Europe, I don't think this will hurt us. No. I think because Israel cannot say that wherever there is an act of terror, they are also a victim. We are against any form of terror, and we are the ones who are subjected to state terror. So Israel cannot win from that as well. People
Let me just get a brief comment from Alon, because we are rapidly coming to the end of the show.
To the lack of solution.
Alon, what do you want to say?
I can understand what Mustafa Barghouti is saying about the behavior of the Fatah, but not of the Hamas. You cannot say the Hamas went the diplomatic way. The Hamas went the violent way. We were sitting under the missiles for 53 days. So it's true about Abu Mazen, but not about Hania.
Okay, let me just put a question to
ICC will
Jeff.
check Hania.
Jeff, if there is a full investigation at the end of the day, if this preliminary examination finds that there is a case to answer against Israel, a lot's going to depend on whether Israel cooperates with any investigation, doesn't it?
Not necessarily. The court has investigated situations in countries which have not cooperated with the ICC. For example, Sudan is a very prominent example where they indicted the head of state, Omar al-Bashir. And they still managed to succeed in gaining evidence, investigative material, by, for example, moving to the refugee camps in the neighboring states. So it's quite possible for them to continue the investigation whether or not Israel cooperates.
OK, and last question to Mustafa. This issue of Hamas. Does Hamas support your move to the ICC? Because it's Hamas who've been firing rockets into Israel.
Absolutely. They are among all the Palestinian groups, including Fatah, Hamas, our group, the initiative, everybody, including Hamas and Jihad, signed an agreement demanding that Abbas goes to the ICC. And by the way, if Israel did not conduct the last war on Gaza, we would have had a complete ceasefire. Now they are committed to the ceasefire. They are accepting nonviolent approach. If Israel does not attack them, if Israel attacks them, of course they react and they try to defend themselves. But let me say that, of course, Israel is boycotting all investigation committees. Tomorrow, there is the Human Rights Commission committee that was formed to investigate what happened in Gaza. Israel is preventing them from coming to the West Bank. Israel is blocking them from going to Gaza. Israel is refusing to cooperate with them.
Okay.
We have to talk to them by going to Jordan. So Israel refuses any investigation committee, and by so they are showing they are against international
I know that
law.
this is one of those issues that we could talk for a lot longer, but we do have to leave it there. I want to thank you all very much indeed for joining us. My guests, Alon Liel, Mustafa Barghouti and Jeff Handmaker. And of course, you can let us know your thoughts about today's show or any other show. Just go to our website, aljazeera.com. You can post your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or you can contact us on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Shiulie Gosh, and all the team here, thanks for watching. Bye for now.